What's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's been a while since I did a chip review, and that's exactly what we're gonna do today. Before we move on, remember to hit that like button, that share button, that subscribe button, and all the other buttons of that nature because it really helps the channel. So with that being said, let's try some chips. So all 4 bags of chips we'll be trying today are from the Lorenz brand and come from the Naturals range. We'll be starting off with what I'll say is probably the most basic flavor out of the 4, that being Parmesan. The chips don't seem overly premium, nor do I see anything that claims they are premium, which is a nice touch because if they're nice, then great. If they're bad, then I probably won't hate them as much because they're not being pretentious. So the chips are made up of potatoes, sunflower oil, salt, sweet whey powder for those gains, Parmigiano-Reggiano cheese powder, lactose, natural flavorings which contain milk products, which I guess makes sense because you have lactose and you have whey powder, and finally yeast extract, which seems to be quite a common ingredient when it comes to these saltier, more umami flavored chips. Let's give it a try. Well, they smell like regular chips with a little hint of Parmesan. I probably wouldn't say it's Parmigiano-Reggiano based off the smell, but if the ingredients list says so, then it probably is. Maybe? So the chip is definitely a thinner cut chip and is quite heavily deep fried, as you can see from the bubbles. It seems to still have the skin on, which seems to be more of a marketing gimmick these days. It doesn't really add any extra flavor or detract from the chip. So yeah, seems like a fairly standard chip. So, the chip is not bad in that it's a relatively standard chip. It's salty, it's crunchy, and has a very slight hint of some sort of cheese powder. I say cheese powder because it sort of reminds me of that cheap Parmesan that you find in cheaper Italian restaurants, or I guess pizza joints, if that's the right word. It's like that Kraft cheese powder that you just sort of tip out in that little plastic bottle. Tastes a bit like that, which is not really a bad thing, especially for cheaper chips. I kind of expected that. Overall, a pretty decent chip, but still relatively tame. Next bag. Next up, we have the mild paprika flavor. According to the ingredients list, it's made up of potatoes, sunflower oil, salt, sea salt. Sea salt? I'm not sure why they needed salt and sea salt, but okay. Sweet whey powder again for those gains, sugar, paprika powder, tomato powder, onion powder, fructose, spices, herbs, and natural flavoring, which contains milk once again, and paprika extract because regular paprika wasn't enough. Based off the ingredients list, I'm expecting this to have quite a strong tomato flavor and to be fairly sweet, so a bit similar to that of the tomato flavored twisties. Let's give it a try. Okay, this actually smells a lot less tomatoey than I expected. It's a lot closer to that of the hot and spicy flavor from Calbee, if you know which one that is. Once again, it's a fairly decent chip, and it lives up to its claims of being flavored with mild paprika. It's basically your run-of-the-mill chip with a very slight smoky flavor right at the end. Not so much like a barbecue kind of smoky flavor, but more of a roasted bell pepper sort of flavor. There's a slight aftertaste right at the end, which is very distinctively bell pepper or capsicum, however you want to call it, but it's not unpleasant. And if you're not looking out for it, you may not even notice it. Still, it's a fairly decent chip, and I will say that the tomato flavor isn't super present. It's there, I guess. It's a lot less sweet and a lot less tomatoey than I expected, so overall, still decent. Not a bad chip after all. Next bag. Next up, we have the balsamic vinegar flavor. Now, I will say that the image of the balsamic vinegar used reminds me of chocolate sauce for some reason. Maybe because it's a bit more viscous, it's a bit more syrupy, and most of the balsamic vinegar you get out there tends to be a lot runnier. If you're gonna get balsamic vinegar that's super syrupy, especially if it's this thick, it's gonna cost you a lot of money. So chances are it didn't use this kind of balsamic vinegar. It's made up of potatoes, sunflower oil, salt, sea salt again, I'm not sure why they're splitting the two, sweet whey powder for the gains once again, sugar, onion powder, balsamic vinegar powder, vinegar extract powder because those two are not the same apparently, pepper, additional natural flavoring, and yeast extract. Surprisingly, this is the first bag I've seen in a while that's using pepper as one of its ingredients. Let's give it a try. Okay, this has a slightly strange smell. It's not super tart, it's not super sour like other vinegar chips, and the bulk of the smell reminds me of Chinese medicine. If you've gone to like a Sing Se, you know, that sort of herbally weird black liquid or the other herbs that they put in your medicine for you to drink. This smells a bit like that, which is not super pleasant. Okay, so this bag is probably the weakest out of the three so far. It's more sour than I expected, and is probably the most sour chip out of all the chips I've tried on this series. Other than it being sour, I don't think it has any of the flavor profiles of what I would consider balsamic vinegar. It's not sweet, it's not fruity, it's just sour. And if you didn't tell me it was balsamic vinegar, I probably would have thought it was regular vinegar because, well, it doesn't have the sweetness that balsamic vinegar should have. I'm gonna try one more. Yeah, definitely really sour. It's not a terrible chip, but it's definitely not something I would rank really high on my list of favorite chips. Next bag. There we go. And finally, we have the rosemary flavored chips. Based off my past experiences, this could be really good or this could be really, really bad. The chips are made up of potatoes, sunflower oil, salt, sweet whey powder, once again, sea salt, sugar, onion powder, parsley, thyme, garlic powder, rosemary, natural flavoring without milk this time, and yeast extract. Now, the strange thing I'm noticing is that although it's rosemary flavored, it also has other ingredients such as parsley, thyme, and garlic, which is a bit strange because if I made a rosemary flavored chip, I would want the rosemary to be the star of the show. Let's give it a try. It actually smells pretty decent. It smells of rosemary and chips, which is not a bad thing. For once, I'm gonna say that I actually think that I may like this bag of chips. What it tastes like is what the packaging says, but not on the front. It's basically what the ingredients list said. You taste the potato, you taste the rosemary, which is sort of there, strong enough, but not overpowering. And then you get the other flavors, which is your parsley, your thyme, and definitely the garlic. Now, these flavors work very well together, not only in, I guess, chips, but in regular cooking, especially Italian cuisine. It lends itself really nicely to this bag of chips, which is surprising. But I will say that maybe it's a bit more accurate to call it, I don't know, maybe Italian spice if you threw in a bit of oregano, or just spice chips or something like that, because yes, there is rosemary, but there's also every other ingredient stated on the back of the, well, chips. It's a nice bag of chips and probably my favorite out of a lot of chips right now, but to call it a truly rosemary flavored bag of chips, I can't really say that's accurate. So overall, all four bags were fairly decent, in my opinion, a lot better than a few of the other brands I've tried in the past because they're not super expensive and they're not overly pretentious while providing better quality and staying truer to what the packaging says. That being said, for these four, I would probably rank them in terms of favorite to least favorite in the order of rosemary, I guess Parmesan, the paprika, and then the balsamic one. Even though it smells like Chinese medicine, it's still not that bad. I probably won't buy that flavor in future because if I'm buying this particular brand, I'm still going to go for the rosemary based off these four flavors. So yeah, that's basically all for today. If you enjoyed the video or learned something new, or now know which bags of chips you want to try or which ones you don't want to try, well, you know what to do. Subscribe, share, like, and do all that stuff. That's it for today, and I'll see you all next week or the week after for a video just like this. In the meantime, I'm gonna say thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you beautiful people in the next video.